is my colleague and friend, John Blodgett, District Attorney of Essex County. When I think of law enforcement officials, I know that John is one of the most respected that we have, not just in the state, but in the country. And he certainly has always been a leader in safety and prevention on that. So we're really thrilled that he was able to do this with us here today. I want to thank Mayor Judy Flanagan Kennedy from the City of Lynn, who was unable to join us today. Her house is in the middle of renovation. She thought she wanted to make sure it wasn't completely torn down instead of just fixed. But she sends her best, and we thank her and the city officials for allowing us this forum. Thank Superintendent Kathy Latham as well, the principal of our Lynn Classical, and all of the other personnel who helped make the facility available and bring it up to the capacity so that we could be here today. I want to thank Chief Carpenter, who's joined us on the panel, and all the members of his force for their cooperation on this, and all of our panels who I'll introduce in just a couple of minutes on that. I'll tell you a little bit about the format. I'm going to give some brief remarks, and then the district attorney will do the same. And then we're going to ask some questions that hopefully will engage all of the members of the panel in one form or another, after which we'll open it up for debate from the floor, for comments or questions. And we're going to try to ask people to limit it to 2 minutes for their comment or their question. And if it's a question, we're going to ask the reply be also limited to about 2 minutes, so that way we can get as many individuals an opportunity to speak. If it gets to be that we have long lines, we may have to narrow that down a little bit, but hopefully not. I have Sarah Cahill from our office with us in the front here. She's going to hold up a sign and do something so that John and I know when we're getting close to the line on time. I want to thank Sarah and all of our staff that are here today helping out with this. They've done a lot of work to try to make this go smoothly and give people the opportunity to come and speak on this issue. This is, of course, an issue that is not just being talked about in this 6th district, in Essex County, Middlesex County, but obviously throughout the state and throughout the country. We have as much conversation in Congress about this. We have a gun task force, gun safety task force that's been meeting, trying to come up with ideas. We're all familiar that the president has made several proposals on different aspects of things that he says he thinks will be helpful in terms of safety, checks on gun sales, strengthening the database, limitations on high-capacity ammunition, increasing research regarding gun violence, providing schools with the options to protect themselves as they see fit, amongst other measures on that, many of which I've considered and support as well. And today we'll get to hear what others think. Our panelists, starting from my left, I guess, on that, Robert Champagne, the Chief of Police for the City of Peabody, Liam Lowney, the Director of the Massachusetts Office of Victim Assistance, Dr. Robert Joss, Psychological Consulting Services of Salem, Mayor Donna Holliday, the City of Newburyport. Now, Dr. Steve Boise was from the Board of Directors of Gun Owners Action League, had asked to be here and be invited, and we did so. He called us last night, however, to say that he's coming from Charlotte, so he's not even sure he's going to make it before the end, but he's going to try, and he's racing down here to do that. Essex County Sheriff Frank Cousins, Lynette Almadine, mother of Ross Almadine, who tragically died in the shootings at Virginia Tech. Officer Robert Ferrari, who's a school resource officer in the Lynn Police Department. Richard Cowdell, the principal of the Marshall Middle School in Lynn. Ann Krantz, the district chapter lead for Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. John Rosenthal, the director of Stop Handgun Violence. And as I mentioned before, our chief of police here in the city of Lynn, Kevin Carpenter. So we'll start with the premise that the Second Amendment, as interpreted now by the Supreme Court in the District of Columbia versus Heller, protects a right to possess and carry arms. And that Second Amendment applies equally to the federal and state laws that impact that right. That was set up in McDonald versus the City of Chicago case. So that's the end of my citing law on that. I don't want to get too technical, but I mean, it's clear that that's the interpretation on that. But in the Heller decision, in that court, the court also said, and I quote, like most rights, the right secured by the Second Amendment is not unlimited. And they continue on the quote, it's not a right to keep and carry any weapon whatsoever, in any manner whatsoever, or for whatever purpose. So the court then listed a history of different prohibitions that were allowable under the Second Amendment, and it wasn't an exhaustive list according to them. So there are apparently many forms of gun control that are consistent with the right of the people to keep and bear arms. And it's not the purpose of this forum, that the district attorney and I have already talked about, it's not our purpose here to relitigate the Second Amendment or the cases under it. That's accepted. We're not trying to delegitimize any of that. There'll be other forums for people that want to take that bend. But the district attorney and I are here today to sort of welcome a fulsome discussion about what form of action might be consistent with the Second Amendment and would give us all a sense of better protection and safety in our neighborhoods, in our schools, and in our families. So we're reviewing this, or viewing it from a perspective of public safety and public health. Now, there are many who emphasize different aspects of that. Some of the programs that I mentioned that the president had talked about doing, some that I and other members have favored, but we're really here to hear what all of you and the members of our panel think is an appropriate way to deal with the situation that confronts us. Since Newtown, of course, there's been a very heightened awareness, but we've had a number of incidents before that got the attention of the country, and now we think that this is crystallizing into a debate that's going to result in some proposals that will come before Congress, will be debated, as well as in the Massachusetts legislature, will be debated and voted upon. So as we get a couple of thousand letters and emails and calls on the subject, taking the whole range of positions on that, and I thought this would be a good opportunity for us to do it publicly and listen to one another. District Attorney, would you like to give us a couple of remarks?
You hear me? I will, I'll be brief. And I want to thank all of you for coming out on a Saturday afternoon to be part of this discourse today. This is truly democracy in action, and I would hope, and I'm asking you to be respectful of one another. We all witnessed, or most of us witnessed what happened last week in Congress with a hearing in which Chief of Police in Milwaukee, Ed Flynn, he's the former Secretary of Public Safety in Massachusetts, and then the police chief in Chelsea, also Fairfax, Virginia, was subject to, unfortunately, some very rude and offensive treatment by a veteran United States Senator. I found it offensive because all he was trying to do was voice his opinion. And I think we're better than that nationally, and that's why I'm agreeing to do this today. I want to have a polite, civil discourse where many minds, many opinions, and that's fine. That's what this country's about. But I think that we need to discuss this issue because it's not a question again of if, it's a question of when. What I'd like to do, though, first of all, is get this right out of the way before I start my comments. I'm a gun owner. I happen to own more than one gun. I also have a license to carry a firearm. The back of this license is my fingerprint, and I'll get back to this in a second. So I believe I bring some credibility when it comes to this issue, and the fact, as Congressman Tierney said, we're not here to talk about abridging someone's Second Amendment rights. We're here to talk about what we can do nationally to make our country a safer place to live. This is a discussion that has to be had. And I mention that because there are many ways to address this issue. We're going to hear about mental health issues. We're going to hear about technology. My opinion is that I deal every day in my job with victims of crime. We prosecute people who are criminals who have guns illegally. There's a gun court here in Lynn. Successful. Very encouraging. When we started the gun court in 2006, we had hundreds of cases that were backlogged. And now we have a very manageable amount. It's a serious priority prosecution for me. Again, criminals illegally possessing and using handguns. It's a community problem, not just in Lynn, but throughout Essex County. You'll hear some discussion later today about community guns. I'll talk about that in a minute. But there's many ways to deal with this issue. One of them is national background checks. It's astonishing to me that an account last week in the Boston Globe by two very reputable journalists, one being Kevin Cullen, described, and I'm going to give full credence to their reporting, described how a man who was the second most wanted criminal in the world, Whitey Bulger, was able to secure firearms on his way to California, the Las Vegas gun show. That wouldn't happen in Massachusetts. Gun owners in the audience realize and know that Massachusetts has very strict and comprehensive gun laws. But I can't purchase a weapon in this state without using this card with my fingerprint at the back. How could someone like Mr. Bulger buy weapons while on the run to be possibly used during his country? We need to have a discussion about that. We need to find a solution about that. In our world today with technology and information sharing, we can do better. I don't have all the answers. And I'm not here to lecture anybody. I'm here to listen. But the fact of the matter is, we owe it to our children and our grandchildren to do something better. So again, I thank you for being here. I really believe we can have a good, productive, civil discussion. The action has to be taken nationally, but we can do it. Thank you for coming. Let's have a good afternoon session. Thank you.
Well, let me start off with a question, if I can. It probably will engage Officer Ferrari and Principal Cowdell, maybe the mayor, on that. It just has to do with one of the proposals that's out there that includes placing safety officers in schools and hiring and training of school psychiatrists. Is that a good idea, or is that something that has to be done? How effective might that be? Do you think that every community ought to be able to go to a fund and use those resources for programs that it develops, or do you think that the federal or state laws ought to be more prescriptive, identifying exactly what should be done? And I'll start with the officer.
I would weigh in on the hiring of the police officers for the school. Being a former school resource officer, and right now I am currently the school security emergency planning liaison between the schools and the police department, is that I would obviously like to see that each city and town has the ability to secure the funding to place sworn law enforcement officers into the schools should they elect to do so. We've had a tremendous collaborative effort with the Lynn Public Schools, where we've at one time had 8 school resource officers in our secondary schools. Unfortunately, the funding dried up. Right now, the chief has been able to find the money to put 3 law enforcement officers, school resource officers in our middle schools. Phenomenal program. I don't think you'd find anybody that would debate that. Not only is it a uniform presence in the school, but they are well trained. They go to school to learn about how to actually be a school resource officer. It works as a deterrent, but maybe more importantly, what we've seen over the last 10 years or so, the relationships that the police officer develops with the students, their parents, and the staff are what really makes our city a safer place. And I would ask that, Principal Cowdell give his opinion on that.
Mr. Cowdell?
Sure. I would wholeheartedly agree with Officer Ferrari. We have had periods of time since I've been the principal with SROs and periods of time without, brief periods of time without. And there is a definite difference. The relationship is the key part. Being able, and I was talking to Ann before this and explaining to her that it's very, very rare that we are looking at our SRO as an armed security guard that's in the school. The vast, vast majority of the time, he's a resource there for the students to go to. He's building relationships. If a parent wants to come in and has any type of concern, legal concern, perfect. He's the perfect person to refer them to. He's very professional, yet at the same point is constantly building relationships, which becomes very preventative. Not just for mass shootings or any type of extreme situations like that, but just day-to-day issues, bullying and things that at the foundation point can lead to more important and more critical issues. And the ability, our current SRO has been there, he's just finishing up his first year. He started mid-year last year, and he's at the point now, I was explaining to Ann, that he now has relationships across the school. The kids will actually come and talk to him about it. They look at him in a totally different way than most students or most children would look at police officers. Yet, in the event that something happens, there is no doubt in my mind that an immediate change of role would happen, and he would be there, especially after the Newtown incident happened. He and I talked just after that. We were talking about it. There's no doubt in my mind that he's there, and for our protection, the protection of everybody. And knowing that makes me as a principal feel a lot better coming in every day, knowing that there is an immediate response within the building if anything like that were to happen.
Thank you, Mr. John, did you want to make a comment on that?
I think relationships are critical, and having a psychologist, frankly, at schools, I think would be probably more effective. There were 2 armed, trained police officers at Columbine High School. They were outgunned by teenagers with military-style assault weapons and high-capacity ammunition clips. Bobby, who I play hockey with, carries 15 rounds. Congress has said it's perfectly fine for the mentally ill and criminals to buy 30 to 100 round clips to outgun police officers. We do not need arms races at schools. Before we start arming every school, there's 130,000 elementary and secondary schools. You put 2 armed police officers at every school, that's the U.S. Marine Corps. Think about what that costs. We ought to start with a background check requirement. We ought to start with an ammunition clip prohibition. As a duck hunter, you're restricted to 3 rounds in your duck hunting rifle to protect the duck population. But Congress has no restriction on the number of rounds that criminals can buy to kill people. So there's a lot of things we should do before we should start spending hundreds of millions of dollars arming schools.
Thank you. Dr. Johnson, do you have a comment on that?
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, the idea of putting a psychiatrist in every school would be prohibitively expensive as well. And, but I think where we need to be spending some funds is on training people who are in a position of seeing students whose behavior is aberrant and possibly dangerous. So putting effort into training guidance counselors, the school psychologists that we already have, administrators and so forth, who are the ones who are very often the first people to run into people who are students who are in trouble. So I think that's a way to go. So to think about this in a public health perspective, usually when you think about a problem in a public health perspective, you think a lot about prevention. And prevention has a lot to do with training people to recognize early symptoms of a problem. We've done well in our country with some public health problems that we've had in the past with respect to AIDS and with respect to smoking. We've controlled those fairly well. It's interesting to note that you can watch a movie and go to the cinema and watch a movie. You won't see anybody smoking in the movie, but you'll see a lot of gun violence. So I think there are some things that we need to be doing to think in a public health perspective about the approach to prevention.
I don't know, I guess as chairman of the school committee, and you're sitting as well.
Thank you, Congressman. I agree with a lot of what has been said here. It's not about arming SROs and having a military or police presence in the schools. It's about having SRO relationships with the teachers, with the students, and just having a set of eyes. But what's happened over the last decade is we have all of the school systems and Massachusetts have seen devastating cuts. And where were the cuts? Where did they happen? They happened in the area of guidance, they happened in the area of counseling, they happened in these areas, and special needs populations are increasing. Students with more challenging mental health issues are being served in this inclusionary models in our schools, which is important. But we have to let the school districts work with the funding that's available to design programs that best fit and best meet their needs, because each of our school districts are different. And I think there's not one cookie cutter approach that should be applied to our school districts, but give us the tools so that we can rebuild our staffing, involve more training so that we can recognize and support students who have these types of difficulties.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Attorney, you have a question?
I do. I have a question in the consideration of time. My question is to Chief Champagne, Chief Coppinger, and Sheriff Cousins. I'd ask you gentlemen to give a 1-minute answer if you can, and I'm making it very challenging for you. But I'd ask you, because you're all on the ground dealing with gun violence in your communities, and the sheriff warehouses people who've been accused of victim of gun violence. If you can give me your thought in terms of the single biggest cause for your problem in your community, whether it's mental health issues, whether it's background checks, whether it's the availability of guns from bordering states, whether it's domestic violence, if you could tell me your thought in terms of how your community is most impacted by, and pick that one topic that you think has the most effect for you and what you do. I'll start with Chief Carpenter first.
Thank you, John. I'd like to answer all three of those, but you restricted me to one, so I'll give you one. And one of the problems we see here, particularly in the cities like Lynn, is the availability of firearms from our neighboring states. Massachusetts has some of the toughest gun laws in the country. I think they're excellent. They might be able to be tweaked a little bit, but neighboring states, the gun laws are very minimal up there. Quick case in point, a couple of years ago, we had there were two individuals, one was from Lynn, one was from Boston, who were going up to Maine, answering an ad they saw in like a classified ad, same way you buy an automobile. And they went up and they bought over 100 guns in a 14-month period of time, bringing them back to Massachusetts and putting them out with the criminal elements. They finally got caught up in a sting from the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Agency, but we have a lot of documented cases where you can go up to New Hampshire or Maine or some of the other neighboring states and get guns very easily. There's no background checks, or if they are, they're minimal. There's very little documentation. You don't have to have a permit. And by the way, those two individuals I just mentioned that went to Maine, both of them were convicted felons, which is a lifetime prohibition against getting a gun. But they still went up there. So we have to tighten that up. That has to be better, and I would say that's going to be better nationwide.
Thank you, Chief. Sheriff Cousins.
Thank you, Jonathan. And a couple of things that I think are important. One, being a member of the Mass Sheriff's Association, International Association of Chiefs of Police, and Macon County Chiefs of Police, one of the things that I think that we all agree on is we'd like to see a ban on military assault style weapons. We'd also like to see a ban on large magazines or clips, and then also, which I think is very important to piggyback on what Chief Carpenter said, is universal background checks. We do that for criminals now that come into the Sheriff's Department here in Essex County. Clearly, that could be done from a national level so we can really get a handle on giving out guns to people that should not have them. And they could have mental health issues, or clearly they could be felons or convicted criminals, and they shouldn't be getting guns. So I think it needs to be done on a national level. And the other thing that I think is important that we all agree on from a law enforcement perspective is to get someone to run the ATF and have an appointment there similar to the director of the FBI, and really give them a 10-year term to go and aggressively enforce these laws. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Chief Campaign, the single biggest concern you have as the chief of the city of PD concerning gun violence.
I think, John, there's a number of things that are out there, and I think both the sheriff and the Chief Carpenter have addressed them. But I think the idea of communications and being able to get enough information, particularly about people that have some serious mental health issues, before we issue permits or before they have the ability to get firearms. Sorry, I have a bit of a cold here, so I'm trying to nurse it through. To that end, I think that it requires an awful lot of communication by everybody here. A lot of it's prohibited by law from us to do that. I think everybody up here talks about the same thing. Most of the folks that are here, and I suspect here in Massachusetts that I deal with, all law-abiding citizens, all firearms owner, all do the right thing, always want to do the right thing. And as an employer of 100 police officers, we carry them as tools. So the issue, I think, is one of communication, John, and one that we really have to work a little bit harder at getting all of that done.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a bit of a broader question because I want to really get involved here. Liam Lowney and Ann Krantz and Lynette Malmedy, on an issue on that. And so let me just ask broadly, and then you can give the input that you think is significant on that. What are the best ways that you think that for responsible gun owners to protect themselves and their communities from gun-related incidents? Lynette, you want to start?
Yeah, hi, I'll take that. I can speak, obviously I'm speaking from a mom's perspective, and I think that our organization really is not looking to infringe on any Second Amendment rights. And, I think that the bottom line for us is really coming up with, common sense gun regulations that are going to make our children safer. I think that, at this point, following Newtown and all the other kind of mass shootings, we live in a world today where, as a mom, I have to be thinking about gun violence every time I send my child to first grade. And I don't think that's acceptable. That's not an acceptable way to live, and I don't think, you know, any of us really should have to live with that fear. And so I think that, you know, it's really time. The momentum is there, and I think it's time to take action and enact some of these, you know, common sense regulations that certainly don't infringe on the Second Amendment or the right to bear arms for, you know, a law-abiding gun owner.
Thank you. Liam?
Sure. It's a little difficult for me to speak specifically about what gun owners can do to keep themselves safe, but I can speak very more specifically about what happens when guns are not kept safe and the impact of that. I sit here, I wear two hats. I am the executive director of the Mass Office for Victims Assistance, but I'm also a brother of Shannon Loudon, who was murdered 18 years ago while working at the Planned Parenthood Clinic in Brookline. And so 18 years ago, I met people like John Rosenthal, and we began talking about the impact of violence and the impact of, he was talking about it before I came along, but that was my introduction. And I can tell you there is an impact on my family, and there have been impacts on the many families I have worked with as a victim advocate over the years. But specific to Shannon's case, we did start talking to the legislature, and we started talking about gun safety in Beacon Hill, and we do have some of the strongest laws here. Shannon was killed by an assault rifle, a man carrying an assault rifle with a folding stock, who had 30-round banana clips taped together. He killed her, another woman, and shot 5 other people with hollow point bullets. We talked about all of those things when discussing that at the Massachusetts legislature. Many of those things have been prohibited, and I'm really pleased about that. But the reality is the man that killed Shannon bought his gun in New Hampshire. And so it could happen again today. So I echo the chief's thoughts on that. The impact is great. The impact is more than what we see in Newtown. It's more than what we see in Arizona. These are families. It's more than the person gone. It's continuous.
Thank you. Lynette, do you want to make a comment? Say whatever you will.
They really said it all.
Okay. That's fine. You can do that on that. John, you have another question?
I have a question, and I'm trying, we've been covering mental health checks, large capacity, but I'd like, I'm trying to be one trick pony with respect to my questions to law enforcement, but I'd like either Officer Ferrari or one of the chiefs or the sheriff to talk about the phenomenon of community guns. I think most of you out here today are not aware of, or probably in law enforcement, dealing with people who use community guns for their crimes. It's an issue, it's a critical issue, I think, in our fight to get guns out of the hands of the criminals. So I'd ask either Chief Coppinger or Bob to talk about the impact community guns has on our community. I'm sorry, Chief, define for the audience what a community gun is and how it's used.
Sure. I just want to preface my comments on this question. The only one good thing that came out of Newtown is this discussion. And it's unfortunate that we have to have a Columbine or a Aurora or a Newtown to have these discussions, when every day there's illegal firearms out there in the hands of criminals who are shooting people. And I don't care if you live in Newtown or you live out in Aurora, Colorado, Lynn, Boston, Chicago, it happens everywhere. And community guns are out there. As I mentioned before, they're brought in here illegally. A lot of times they're sold for drugs, and then they're used to commit crimes. Drugs are a problem in today's society, and addicts have to fuel their habits by crime. Robberies, B&Es, but a lot of times they have a firearm in their hands. When we see the guns out in the street, we have to have swift and effective prosecution. If we don't do that, we're not sending the right message to the criminals out there. So when we find somebody with a gun, we're very happy we can bring them in, lock them up, and get them prosecuted and get them in jail. We've had instances over the years, since we had the DA mentioned a few minutes ago, the gun court. And I agree with the DA, that has been a huge success here in Lynn and the surrounding towns. You know, we try to track how many guns we recover here in our city, and since in the last 4 or 5 years, they've dropped dramatically. And as well as the number of persons shot. You know, 5 years ago, we had 248 instances of confirmed actual shots fired in the city. When I say confirmed, that is from some type of ballistic evidence. That's dropped to 141 last year. And that still may sound a big number, I'm not saying persons who were actually shot. Those are shots that were fired in some type of a criminal offense. And I think the message that we've sent out there is that if people are going to engage in criminal activity with a firearm, we are going to prosecute them. As long as we do that, that is one piece of the pie that we can straighten out. Again, we don't need a Newtown or an Aurora or someone else to bring this to a forefront. This is happening every day of the week, and this affects our kids, our loved ones, everybody in society needs to stay on top of it.
Officer Ferrari, I'm sorry, John, go
Can I
ahead.
just add something, just because a bunch of things have been talked about, just to add some context. Today, 87 people that woke up will be dead tonight from gun violence. 87, including 8 kids under 19 years old. In 33 states, including Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire, there is no background check requirement for private gun sales. There is no background check for private gun sales in 33 states, including Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire. So, as a law-abiding gun owner, I go to a gun store, they have to run a background check. Private gun dealers do not have to run a background check. Gun dealers who are federally licensed in this country don't even have to operate out of a bona fide store. You file an application, you pay the fee, you can have an unlimited number of guns sent to your home. You can sell them out of a backpack or a car trunk. All perfectly legal. So, the context is, if I'm a law-abiding gun owner, I'm fine going to a gun store because I can pass a background check. But criminals can't pass a background check. They don't have to go to a gun store. So that makes no sense whatsoever. Al-Qaeda even knows to come to the U.S. and go to gun shows where they can buy firearms without an ID or a background check perfectly legally. And to tell you how absolutely out of control this is, the New Hampshire Chiefs of Police Association is doing a raffle in the month of May. They're going to give one gun away each day, starting with a Ruger AR-15 and a 30-round clip, because everybody wants it. Everybody wants an AR-15 and a 30-round clip because they were used to kill babies in Newtown, and they might be banned. That is what you are dealing with in this country.
This is exactly where we don't have to go. Everybody's going to get a chance to speak. That's all it. Give the panelists a chance to speak, and then we're going to move on from there.
Show me where Congress said that mental
People are going to have an opportunity to go to the microphone and speak. I think we all want to be fair here. We all want to give people a reasonable amount of decorum. Before we break this down and have the kind of forum that we don't want to have, try to keep the one that we do want to have, I'm going to ask a broad question here to allow people in the panel to respond, and then we'll go to the microphone, and all of you that are speaking up, and just get in line and have your say. All right, and that's what we want to do.
Bob, can you again, if there's a component of community guns that the public should be aware of, I'd like you to
This is something that we feel very strongly that the audience should know about when we talk about a community gun. So a gun that is purchased illegally might actually have been initially purchased legally, but then transferred illegally, that comes into our city. So let's use the criminal element that most of us know about, the thugs that are gang members. They have a community weapon. They have a gun that is stored in locations that only they know about, and they take turns using that gun that is illegal to commit crimes in our cities. Everybody needs to know that that's happening. This is a huge problem. This is a huge problem. The way that I understand it from colleagues in the ATF, many of them are the straw purchase guns. They go up there, and like the Chief and John mentioned, it's very easy to purchase this gun with little or no background. That person that buys it, their motivation to buy it was to give it to their drug dealer or to that gangbanger for either cash or drugs and put on the streets of our cities and towns. This is a huge problem.
Let me just ask a wrap-up question before we go to the group out there. Massachusetts has the second fewest gun deaths annually in some of the nation's most stringent background check and licensing requirements. Do our panelists think that the Massachusetts model is a good one or a bad one? And should we be thinking about taking that on a national scale or not? Sheriff?
Well, I think we have a very good working model in the Commonwealth. I feel very comfortable with what we've done. I think that we take it, we look at what we do for our employees and how we connect with our local chiefs. I think the licensing process works, and I think it'll be a good example for the country.
If I could, I had a lot to do with the Massachusetts gun laws. Massachusetts has always had either the first or the second lowest firearm fatality rates in the nation.
That's a lie. We're 17.
Good, we're going to allow the member of the panel to speak without any rude interruptions, and then people will be able to get their comments, and we won't rudely interrupt them either.
So, according to the National Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and you can go on and look at their sites, Massachusetts has either had the first or the second lowest firearm fatality rates in the nation. In 2009, we had the very lowest firearm fatality rate in the nation of 3 per 100,000 population. National average is 10.6. We have the most comprehensive gun laws in the nation, and we have the very first in the nation consumer protection standards for firearms. So that the gun industry that sells firearms in Massachusetts, like Smith & Wesson, has to at least put certain safety features into their guns. Toy guns and teddy bears are regulated on how they are made. There's a little red dot on the end of a toy gun that tells a police officer it's a toy. Firearms have 0 federal regulations on how they are made. They are exempt from the National Consumer Product Safety Commission, and then Congress gave absolute immunity to the gun industry so they can't be sued. So as a business person, I have to shovel my walks to make sure that people don't slip and fall at houses and apartments. I can be sued if I don't. The gun industry, 2 of the guns used at Columbine are marketed as having a finish resistant to fingerprints. Who are they marketing to? The gun used at Fort Hood, Texas is marketed, it's a FN Hertel 22 caliber pistol, it's marketed as capable of penetrating 48 layers of soft body armor. Who wears soft body armor? So what Massachusetts has done, we treat guns like inherently dangerous products, like automobiles, training, licensing, and safety features. And since 1994, we have reduced injuries and deaths from firearms by over 20%. We're the national model. We just simply have to replicate what Massachusetts has done, so law-abiding gun owners can get their firearms, but they have to have a background check.
So the
And they have to store their guns properly.
The answer is yes, John. You think the match was allowed?
Yeah,
Lynette, sure, go ahead, you have a chance to speak in. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Lynette Almadine, and my son Ross was killed at the Virginia Tech massacre, April 16th, 2007. And he was killed by a mentally ill student who was admitted to the hospital. At that time, there is a national instant criminal background check, but he was not entered into the system. So when Joe went to purchase his guns, he got them online, got his magazines online, went to the gun store, the gun owner checked his background, and it came up clean. So with that, he bought the 2 Glock semi-automatic weapons and came in and killed 32 students, including my son, and injured 17 in 9 minutes. I didn't know what a magazine was. I thought it was a magazine. When the Virginia Tech State Police came to the house and he said, well, he went online and got a magazine, and I thought, oh, a magazine? So anyway, nobody should have to have this happen to them. Somebody being killed, having that phone call, it just is devastating. And in Massachusetts, there's only 1 mentally ill person entered into our background check system, and that needs to be fixed. And we know, I'm not just saying that a mentally ill person shouldn't have a gun. He was educated mentally ill and harming himself or others. So I just wanted to let you know that, and if we can try and tell, the governor or do something, call your congressman and have this system fixed. Thanks.
Thank you. 40 minutes set aside for audience participation here, and we're going to have a microphone somewhere here. I know Drew, there's a microphone here. If people want to speak, they just need to come to the microphone. Sarah is going to show the person speaking their time limit, as well as John and I up here.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Charles Dorothy. I direct this to our mental health professionals. Since we have had students, and you know, it is a shame that it is the way it is, but since we have used the SSRIs, which is serotonin uptake inhibitors, we've had over 70 of those children or people using them, and that was the Aurora shooter, who this is supposed to handle and take care of their aggravation or their depression or otherwise. It is done and proven to be just the opposite, that it made them much more violent or suicidal. So we do have stuff out there, and we do have things to do, but we are covering a broad span of everything here. And I would go to the police chiefs and to our district attorney, and I would say, NRA, and I am a life member and a member of GOAL and of a Davis Fishing Game Club. I am a father and a grandfather, and I taught them all to shoot, and they all shoot. Now, we have the Eddie Eagle program. That is a great program that goes into the school, but too many people have, because it says guns, they turn against it. If we got the police officer, I'm sorry. All right, okay, my point is this: if we got the local police department safety officer to get with the NRA Eddie Eagle program, go into our schools and start teaching. Education, as we know, when you tell people something and they know, then we have got something more concrete in which to deal with. They're not afraid.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Okay, my name is Raymond E. Charette, and I want to thank you, Mr. Tierney, Mr. Blodgett, and everybody on the panel. It's wonderful, great. My question is, why do we need any more gun control laws in this state? We have the strictest, I know I've been a gun owner for 40 years, and I'm very responsible. And I want to know why. Why do we, I can understand about the other states, but I'm only concerned about my state. I love my state. I would die for it. And I want anybody in the panel to answer my question. Why? Why do we need more laws?
Toss it to the panel, but first I'm going to say that I'm in an office that deals with the United States, so that we have to deal with the broad question on that. But it's why I asked the question before about Massachusetts laws. Is that the model? You know, as opposed to adding things on, is Massachusetts the model we should take elsewhere? John gave a pretty good answer of what he thought on that. Is there anybody else that wants to weigh in? Mr. District Attorney or the Sheriff or Dr. Goss?
Yes, let me just respond to you. From a public health perspective, one of the ways that you work is you look at what has been done in other places that is helpful. If we are doing a good job here in Massachusetts, then that should be a model for other places in the country.
Thank you. I don't know if anybody wants to address that up here, but I think there's a book that was put out by Johns Hopkins University. After the Newtown event, they had a panel, wide-ranging panel, and then they put out a group of edited essays about reducing gun violence in America. There's an entire section in here on what other countries do. So if people are interested in seeing that, it's Reducing Gun Violence in America, put out by Johns Hopkins on that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, hi, I'm Bob Violet from Peabody, and what I'd like to say is our documentation in 1791, our founding fathers gave us a pretty darn good Bill of Rights and Constitution. And in the Second Amendment, the infringement was to protect the citizenry from a tyrannical government, which we are having today. And so, you know, Congressman, you got a 0 rating with NRA, you got a 0 rating with gun owners, not 30%, it's 0. It's not 10%, it's 0. We try to we had a formidable opponent for you this time. I know we cost you over $2 million, I think $2,229,000. But you know, the president, his agenda right now is when he got out, and right after his election.
What's the time left on? I want to give him all the time.
I'd like to finish my statement, okay? You guys here are talking about, you know, you take God out of the schools and now we have cops in the school. You know, I mean, you can't replace God, believe me. What's going on right now is you just turned a bunch of criminals, illegal aliens out on the street, and you sir, have funded sending tanks to sending tanks and F-16 to our enemy, and here we are talking about handguns and you know.
I think you've made your point, and we
Okay.
appreciate it. Thank you. Won't be running my campaign. Yes, sir.
My name is John Kramer, and I say no to assault rifle bans and universal background checks. People use assault rifles for sporting and hunting purposes. There is a need for assault rifles with high-capacity round magazines for private citizens. People need assault rifles to protect themselves against criminals and wild animals such as grizzly bears and moose. Farmers use assault rifles to protect their chicken coops from foxes and weasels, and cow herds from sheep and herds from wolves. People should be allowed to have as many rounds in their clips as they see fit. Massachusetts should get rid of all of its gun control laws and its licensing requirements, and that will make our state safe. It's time to get rid of the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms and the Drug Enforcement Administration. We don't need it anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. Tuesday. Next.
Hi, my name is John Ramonis, Saugus, Mass. Ever since the Kennedy assassination, every time there's been a high-profile murder, such as Columbine, the emphasis always goes towards the legitimate firearms owners, never addressing the criminals, and that needs to change. The focus is on stopping gun crime, gun violence.
I heard a lot of talk about criminals up here this morning. Maybe you want to address that?
Yeah, I'm getting to that. The focus is always on gun violence, but not violence, which is the root cause. The gun is only the implement. Hammers and clubs cause more murders than firearms do. The emphasis should be on crime, on criminals. And the background check system isn't really working well because felons can plead down to a misdemeanor charge. Okay? The system is not taking into consideration people with mental issues. So it really makes the criminal background check system really not workable. We have a right to protect ourselves. I did not murder anybody. I enjoy my firearms. My firearms are for my personal protection. You know, there's a 3-shot plug for ducks because we want to conserve ducks. I don't want to conserve anybody that's trying to do me harm. Okay? The ducks are not attacking me. Okay? I need the opportunity, I need the firepower, if necessary, to protect myself and protect my family. Please, don't pass any more gun laws. Thank you.
So just when it comes to gun crimes in Essex County, sir, we don't allow plea downs at all, just so you know.
Commissioner, amongst people that are under 40 years old, more people die from gunfire, gun injuries than any other specific disease, thing of that nature, so I don't know if cameras are.
My name is Kevin Barry. I'm a student. I believe I was actually once a student of Chief Champagne's over at North Shore Community College in the 90s. I was also the victim of a home invasion in Lynn in 1997, at a time when, during a divorce, my ex-wife had got a restraining order and my FID card was revoked. And I was attacked by a knife-wielding HIV-positive person in my home at a time when I couldn't defend myself. And I just can't see you people debating all these issues. And I particularly have an issue with this man over here who tells me that Congress says that I don't even know his name, but he told me in the beginning of this statement that Congress says that criminals and mentally incapacitated people can buy as many clips And I'd just like to know when and where they said that, because that's a lie. They can't. You need a background check and an FID card to buy. I'm sympathetic to these two officers' plight with the two gentlemen that brought the 1,000 guns. Now, I understand maybe there should be background checks for private sales too. I'm sympathetic to that plight. But this rhetoric and this embellishment of propaganda just to strum up more regulations, you said to have an intelligent debate. That's just not part of an intelligent debate, sir.
I think part of an intelligent debate is not calling people names and not casting aspersions on their motives or whatever, but getting everybody a chance to give their opinion. And I value yours, and I value John's as well on that. But just generally, I want to tell you, we started off this thing by talking about what the Supreme Court said. The Supreme Court said that people have a right to possess and carry arms, and that Second Amendment applies equally to state and federal. So I think that was part of the groundwork here. Nobody's trying to go after anybody's legal possession of firearms. But the court also said that, like most rights, the rights secured by the Second Amendment are not unlimited. It said that the right to keep and carry, it's not a right to keep and carry any weapon whatsoever, in any manner whatsoever, or for whatever purpose. So it recognized that within that right to bear and carry arms, there may be some instances where you want to protect the public safety and the public health. That's what we're trying to get at here. And people have a different way of doing it. So, we talk about rhetoric for a second, and I don't want the rhetoric to get to a place that anybody up here is trying to take anybody's right to bear arms away. That's not the issue. The issue is within the context of the right to bear and carry arms. Are there things that we can do that would make our neighborhoods and our schools and our families safer? You may think not. You may think that we're doing too much in Massachusetts or just enough, and I think that's a valid position to take. John, you've got a comment as well, John.
Yeah, I too am a gun owner, and I think we should put everybody through a universal background check. But Congress has said, leave it to the states. And so there are 33 states. You may not know this, and this is important information. There are 33 states where you can buy firearms without an ID, never mind a background check, from private gun dealers. So it's absolute truth. So you can, how do you know if somebody's a criminal unless you've done a background check or even a proof of ID? But there's no requirement in 33 states, including Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, and 60%. Well, I'm not talking about guns, but
I don't disagree with
60% of
background
guns
checks.
traced to crime in Massachusetts
I have
come
no
from out of
disagreement with
state,
background
where there's
checks.
no background check requirement for private gun sales. That doesn't make
We can check
sense.
the facts on all that. If you don't believe it, you can check it on that, and both of you will find out whether or not the other's right. But I think what John says, Congress says, what he's really saying is Congress has not taken action otherwise. I mean, Congress obviously doesn't make statements like that.
Congressman, I just point out one thing to you for a second.
Can you do it within
The Supreme Court,
brief time?
give me 10 seconds. The Supreme Court may have said, what you said, but the Constitution says that the people's rights to bear arms shall not be infringed.
Right. But the court is the interpreter of the Constitution, and whether we agree with it or not, unless you want to delegitimize the law in this country, that's what the interpreter does. Yes, sir.
Yeah, hi, I'm Mike Bogart, formerly a land now of Georgetown. I heard a statistic yesterday on the news that said that they prevented, current registrations prevented over 700 felons from getting firearms. But it's only resulted in 54 prosecutions and only 18 successful ones. So, there's got to be a little more than just, there has to be some way to make the law stick. Like we had Bartley Fox gun law here in Massachusetts that ended up not working out too well. But,
Drew, I'm sorry, you're going to have to hold the microphone closer. I can hear some folks having difficulty hearing.
okay. We had Bartley Fox gun law here in Massachusetts, which originally was written that if someone was arrested in the perpetration of a crime or a handgun was used, he would go to jail for a year. But by the time the Massachusetts legislation got through with that, it ended up being anyone with a handgun goes to jail for a year, ended up being really not enforceable. So we have to do something about it. If we do registration, we have to find a way we can enforce it. Secondly, with regards to mental health, I blame the mental health industry, and it is an industry, on a lot of the problems because mental health treatment has changed so much over the last 30 years. If someone had a psychotic break 30 years ago,
they would go in a hospital and they would be treated with medications, sometimes 2 or 3 weeks till they found out what worked and let go. Now they go in a mental health institution there for 3 days, the insurance company kicks them out, often in worse shape than they went in on. Okay, and that happens all the time. Thirdly, one more quick suggestion, a positive suggestion. Why can't local police stations have a voluntary citizen armory, where if you live in a high crime area, you can store your handguns or your weapons at the police station, so you don't have to worry about people breaking in and stealing them. You don't have to worry about kids getting a hold of them that shouldn't. Follow me? And our police station is open 24 hours a day, so it's accessible to me. Just a suggestion.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the suggestion.
Congressman, can I take the mental health aspect of that
Yes,
question?
sir, Doctor.
Yes. I think he's absolutely right that because of the way in which mental health stuff plays out, there is less support for mentally ill people in the community. It used to be that everybody who was mentally ill went into a hospital and stayed for a long time before they were released. Now they are released fairly quickly. There is very little follow-up in the community. There are many people who go off their medications and again become psychotic. Now, sometimes that's because they can't afford medications, and that's a problem. But we need to do more, and particularly with those people who have a history of violence and are mentally ill, that's where we need to focus the attention.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jason Burrow. I'm actually from Bradford, Massachusetts, but I was a lifelong Lynn resident. I just wanted to thank everyone for their time this afternoon. I think this is important, but I do have a couple of things to say. You had mentioned the Heller case. So the U.S. Supreme Court decision in D.C. versus Heller upheld that arms in common use for personal self-defense at the time are protected under the Second Amendment. There are approximately 5 million AR-15 semi-automatic rifles owned in the U.S. by law-abiding citizens for personal defense use. I would like to know how, or for someone to explain to me, how a ban on these rifles is not unconstitutional. Please also note that this type of rifle was used in less than 1% of gun murders in the U.S. in 2011, according to FBI statistics. Now, I want to just preface this that say, well, how can you call it a personal defense weapon? We just had the Department of Homeland Security just put in a bid to buy 7,000 assault rifles for personal defense. That's what their definition of these rifles were. Exactly, they were selective fire, which means that you can actually go full auto instead of just one pull, one bullet. Another question I have from Massachusetts. You passed, in Massachusetts, we passed in 1998 one of the most comprehensive gun control legislations in the country at the time. This law restricted the gun rights of law-abiding citizens by prohibiting the ownership of certain firearms, limiting magazine capacities, and putting onerous licensing requirements in place. Because of these aforementioned restrictions, licensed firearm owners in Massachusetts decreased from 1.5 million to 200,000 from 1998 to 2002. In a recent Boston Globe article, the murder rate in Massachusetts went from 65 in 1998 to 122 in 2011. Can you please explain to myself and others why you feel that further gun control laws affecting law-abiding citizens will reduce gun violence, knowing that past legislation has not been effective?
Massachusetts has some of the strongest laws in the country, but if I can go to New Hampshire and buy the gun, it's just a car ride away. So I think we have to keep in mind that that's exactly why we have to have this conversation about a federal response here, because the state response isn't enough.
Thank you, sir. You know, you've got a huge line behind you, sir, and I know from convincing what's going on, others are going to share with you.
Hi, my name's Greg Thibodeau. I think that what's needed is a comprehensive program to get rid of not only the illegal guns, but the unwanted ones. I think a lot of law-abiding citizens, especially in Massachusetts, have guns that they would like to get rid of or don't realize that they need to. Yeah, and I don't think they realize that the guns that they own, it's illegal because they're not licensed. So a comprehensive program, every police station you should be able to go in and drop a weapon off, or a fire station. People might be less intimidated to do that. Also have tip lines where either anonymous or with a reward, where someone can point out or say point the police to a gun that's illegal. And then also a buyback program or some sort of a program where somebody who has a gun can go and then go to a gun store and sell it.
Thank you. The chief want to respond to that, or?
I would like to.
Who's that? Oh, Mayor.
We just, thank you, sir. We, in Newburyport, just partnered with a local bank who was able to give, a financial bonus to individuals who decided for those reasons they didn't want their guns anymore for whatever reason. And if anyone was concerned about the fact that it might be illegal, the police officers would actually go to the house and pick up the guns. It was very successful. Within the course of 2 days, over 60 guns were collected in our city. And I think it's a good plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Champagne, do you want to comment?
Right, I agree 100%. That's a fine program. In Peabody, anytime anybody has a firearm that they want anymore, they just come to the police station, turn it in. We'll accept it, no questions asked. Gun buybacks seem to take guns off the street that might otherwise be used in crimes. So I think it's a great idea.
Yes, my name is Walter Haug. I almost left this meeting when I witnessed what I consider a very, very uncomfortable outburst by the people who are very pro-gun. It scared me, and I said to myself, boy, I wouldn't want to meet one of these people outside this building if they had a weapon in their hand. I want you to know, Congressman Tierney, I want you to know that I, and I'm sure many of us throughout the country, support rational, sensible, and reasonable gun control. And I implore you to please consider and to continue your efforts to achieve something within our Congress that will resemble some degree of self-control and gun control for those of us who feel we are endangered by a lack of it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here, especially you, Congressman Tierney. My name is Jose. I reside in Swampscott. I'm a student at UMass Boston, and I'm doing a research on a bill originally introduced last year by Representative Rogers. The bill is H.R. 3523 of the Cyber Intelligence Sharing and Protection Act, which would allow private companies disclose confidential information to the government. My question to you is, the White House strongly opposed the bill, saying that while it protects private corporations from legal lawsuits, at the same time violates our civil liberties as well as our privacy. My question to you, Congressman Tierney, if you will be kind enough to answer this for me, should a bill similar to H.R. 3523 make it for a House vote? Would you support it? If not, what amendments would it have to gain your support?
You're talking about cybersecurity? That's a little bit of an octane from gun safety on that. I think you're talking about a bill by Mike Rogers that I've not fully read yet or worked on it. It's not moving along the process on that basis. But we have a lot of work to do with cybersecurity. We have a group being down in Leiter Corporation that's been pulling people together. We have action over on some of the bases here in Massachusetts that are cyber centers on that, and we're trying to work toward a solution. The main problem being that private companies have a lot of involvement in that. If somebody can break into their system, they can get into a lot of other systems. And some of the smaller companies don't want to spend the money or take the expense of putting in the kind of protections up to the standards that are required. So what the debate really is, do you mandate this protection in there and those standards to be implemented, or do you try to get people to come along voluntarily so that it works? And if it's voluntarily, what happens if somebody steps off the plane and makes everybody else vulnerable? Those are big questions, and they haven't been answered yet. I know there's a series of hearings going on, so I can't give you a complete answer about what amendments I would support or whatever, because we haven't heard what alternatives are out there yet, and that bill is still working its way through the process. Thank you.
I just finished saying that I think it relates to this because not only besides gun shows, I think the internet is one of the easiest ways for people to gain access to guns. So I'm not a gun owner, but I do understand the other side, so I just...
Okay. Well, now I see the connection. I appreciate that. certainly cybersecurity is a huge issue facing us right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Lippert, Lynn resident. This is to the district attorney and the law enforcement personnel. With the Bartley Fox laws, mandatory 1-year possession of weapons, how many people have you prosecuted under that?
Dozens of people since I'm the district attorney.
Percentage-wise?
You know what, I can get that answer to you on Monday, percentage-wise. We have a Lynn gun court, sir. This is a priority prosecution for me, and we're serious about it. We have one judge assigned to it. It's 120 days. If you charge with a gun offense, a 10A offense, from start to finish, in 120 days, you get a trial. And we always ask for committed time. We finish. We take it seriously. It's an important issue for me and for this community. Now, I'm not a legislator. I'm not a judge. I'm the district attorney.
I know that, sir, but...
So I make it a point to put my best prosecutors in that gun court and make sure we ask for the maximum on anybody who has been charged with a legal firearm of 10A.
Yes, but how many have gotten the 1-year mandatory, percentage-wise, you think, off the top of your head?
Probably 20-25% since we set the gun court up.
Thank you. Sir.
Hi, my name is Rick Ramian. I live in Lynn, and the first thing I want to say is I want to thank the Lynn taxpayers for providing these facilities. They weren't provided by the government employees. Now, I think the biggest problem in this country is that we have way too many laws that criminalize, illegalize freedom. So we have too many police enforcing too many laws. It's all of this government violence that is the biggest cause of violence. Like, for example, I'm sure most of you have ever heard of Al Capone and Elliot Ness. Well, those violent gangs were produced by government policy. They were produced by the illegalizers, drug fighters, prohibitionists, who used the law in order to commit violence against millions of fellow human beings. They treated beer drinkers like they were criminals, just like today they treat people who prefer, say, marijuana over a martini are treated as criminals. It's all this violence that's being committed in the name of the law. And this is what more and more people have no respect for the law. And as far as the young people, you know, they look at they get the accused from the adults who are in power. And the adults who are in power, like you folks, are violent people. You want the law, you want more laws, more police, more prisons, more everything, more violence against people.
Thank you. I do know, that during Al Capone's time, the machine guns became a serious problem, and the NRA was amongst the leaders looking to ban them. Correct. Thank you.
Well, today I'm a Lynn resident. I'm Ryan Lippert. I'm a high school student at Lynn Tech. I have one question. You guys talk about community guns, how they're used by criminals. Instead of going after the legal gun owners, why aren't you going after the criminals?
We go after the criminals the best we can. We need the cooperation of the public. We need victims to cooperate. The no snitch rule is a big problem for us in terms of successful prosecutions. But I will tell you that the Lynn Police Department and the state police inside of the gang task force do a very good job of making it clear that we're serious about this. And I asked Officer Ferry to talk specifically about community guns because it's a phenomenon that most people aren't aware of. But it's a real problem when somebody gets a gun and people from a gang have access to that hiding spot and use it. But believe me, we take it very seriously. We've had some very good, successful prosecutions resulting in incarcerated time because of that.
David Fortini. I live here in Lynn, Massachusetts. I have the FBI crime statistics for 2011. So they show that Massachusetts ranks at number 17 in firearm homicides across the nation in 2011. Number 1 went to Hawaii. Number 2 actually went to New Hampshire. New Hampshire gets a D from the Violence Policy Center for gun laws. The Violence Policy Center later goes on to say that it shows that states with strict gun laws have lower gun homicides. But if you look at what they rate states for gun laws, and they have an A through F ranking system, F is a failure, 7 of the states that rank higher than Massachusetts or better than Massachusetts, I'm sorry, they all get either a D or an F for gun laws. So why is it that states like Vermont and New Hampshire and Maine, which have very lax gun laws, have such low homicide rates with firearms? In addition, this big ban of assault weapons, why is that? Rifles are used in less than 4% of crimes in homicides in the United States. Shotguns are used in more homicides in the United States than rifles. Assault weapons are a subset of rifles. Hands and feet, they're used in more homicides than shotguns. So how does banning assault weapons do anything to reduce crime? In addition, magazine bans. Go on YouTube. There are many videos which demonstrate that a person who knows what they're doing can fire just as quickly with a 10-round magazine as with a 30-round magazine. All it takes is a little practice. One last point.
You get 10 seconds,
Mr. Rosenthal, I'd really like to see those ads that you claim show that they advertise guns that are fingerprint resistant. I've never seen those. I'd like to see some of the other ads that you claim to exist. I've never seen them or been able to find them.
Thank you, Congressman, and say hello to your wife, Patrice. Wonderful person. I'm a 50-year member of the NRA. The NRA that I know is not the NRA represented by many people here today. The NRA followed the Swiss model, where you were trained for military service, you had your guns locked up very carefully, and you were very, very careful about weapons. Now, coming from the Vietnam era, I criticize everybody, the police departments, the government, and you're all here as symptoms of a problem. Part of the symptoms of the problem is that the NRA is controlled by fringe groups that are henchmen for lobbyists. Now, in Vietnam, if you look at the movie Born on the 4th of July, you will see Tom Cruise stand up as a Vietnam person. He was born 2 days after me, and he can't use his weapon. The reason why he couldn't use his weapon is lobbyists had different powder in the weapons that were issued to our troops, and the weapons didn't work. And after a firefight at night, you would go out and see all these dead soldiers, and the only thing the Vietnam left were our M16s that didn't work because lobbyists provided weapons that didn't work. Now they're doing the same thing, providing weapons of mass extermination. My daughter works for Sierra Leone, and that's where they use weapons of mass extermination. I don't believe in taking weapons away from homeowners, because I don't necessarily believe police are honest, federal officials are honest, and you have a right for a weapon in your house to protect yourself. A small felony should not take a weapon away from somebody protecting themselves in their house, including police officers that are charged with a small domestic dispute.
Good afternoon. First off, I'd like to give my sincerest condolences to the loss of Miss Alamadine, sorry, I'm bad with pronunciation, son, as well as for the other parents who lost their children in the horrific murder that took place at Sandy Hook. Mr. Tierney, Mr. Blodgett, law enforcement officers, and ladies and gentlemen of today's panel, my name is Ian Strimbeck, and I stand before you today as a Lynn resident, a Marine combat vet, executive protection agent, and a firearms instructor that teaches one of the most sought-after personal defense curriculum within the firearms industry. My question today is, why is Massachusetts one of the only states that it's up to each and every individual licensing officer to determine whether or not you are able to carry a firearm loaded on your person? An example is I live in Lynn, thankfully, thank you, sir, that I am able to carry a firearm for personal protection on me. But another example would be Peabody, where another one of my instructors was in the Army for 8 years, carried a squad automatic weapon overseas in multiple high-threat environments, yet was denied the right to able to carry a firearm on his person. He was given a Class B license, which only limited him to revolvers and shotguns and rifles to carry in his home only, not on his person. So my question is, why is Mass the only state that is like this and not even across the board?
I do know that we invite
issue versus shall issue or must issue state. So it's at the discretion of the police chief in the town where you live to issue the licenses. Unlike some states where if you apply for a concealed carry permit, if you pass a background check, you're required to issue it. That's not the case in Massachusetts. We're an urban industrial state. Once again, we do happen to have the lowest firearm fatality rate, except for one state right now. And unlike what we've heard from somebody, I can't remember which person, according to the Center for Disease Control, states with lax gun laws overwhelmingly have higher firearm fatality rates than states with tough gun laws. It's just the way it is.
Thank you. Next, please.
Can I hold it? No problem. My name is Rob Webb. I'm a Nahant resident. I just want to thank the panel, and I want to express my deepest condolences to you. No one should have to go through what you went through. We're very lucky to live in a society where we can have conversations like this, where people can speak from logic and reason and arrive at tough solutions to tough problems. The problem I see we have, though, is emotional overcorrection, where people apply significance to events that are very rare in their nature, but because they're horrific, we try to just do something, do anything to solve that problem. My question is, what are we doing for the things that happen every day to people at a much greater individual scale, but a smaller national scale? The inner city problems, because most of the gun homicides in this country occur in like the top 50 or 60 urban areas. We don't talk about that. If we remove them out of the equation, the United States has the lowest murder rate in the world. Put those back in, we see that all the gun homicides are concentrated in these areas. We need to have hard conversations about socioeconomic status, race, religion, culture, education. Those are the problems. Those are the roots of all the violence in those areas, not the guns, not the tool. And the AR-15 is not owned by people that live in these areas because of restrictions in those cities and in those urban areas. So clearly addressing the AR-15 and the high-capacity magazine problem, we're not identifying the problem correctly. And I think it's up to this panel, especially people that don't feel the way I do, to get educated in those areas. And people like Ian are happy to educate people in those areas. That's how we're going to arrive at the real solution to these very, very hard problems. Not by demagoguery, which only drives up demand, drives up costs, and makes it harder for law-abiding citizens to get proper and safe training when ammo is expensive and guns are expensive. Then you wind up with people stockpiling and not getting the training, and then it makes it much less safe. Thank you.
Very much.
Hi, my name's John. I'm a resident of Salem. I just want to preface this by saying I'm a 5-year Army veteran, disabled veteran, a former police officer, have multiple degrees, and so I'm not some smuck off the street. I've seen a lot of this before. I've been in shooting incidents before. I'm going to cite one quick statistic. I looked through the data from 2006 to 2010, 72,000-ish homicides in the United States in that time period, and this was all brought about because of one mass shooting incident. A mass murder is considered 4 more murders, and the statistics, when you drill them down to those committed by firearms, 4 or more, is less than 0.42% for all of the murders in 4 years. So I understand the gut-wrenching issue that this brought up, the Sandy Hook, but it actually goes against common sense to restrict legal gun owners that have never had an incident in their lives. Some of them are highly trained. Some of them have been preventing crime and enforcing crime from having weapons. I'm also a competitive shooter. We talk about magazine restrictions. I have a bunch of 10-round magazines. Unless I'm have a police officer returning fire at me, I could walk through a mall, hypothetically, and change magazines at will rapidly, and that's not going to prevent anybody from doing anything. And on that point, there's hundreds of millions of large capacity magazines in the country already. How do you plan on restricting all of them? There's over 400 million firearms in this country. How do you plan on, if we create a national database, in most countries that's led to confiscation. It happened in New York with, in 1991, they tried to confiscate certain weapons. And one of the further point.
I want to make your point, but I just want to let you know that you're at the end.
Yeah, I just want to make one further point. I also have a son who's 3.5 years old who has cerebral palsy and he's in a wheelchair. I am going to defend my home from whatever threats come through that door. I cannot retreat. And there are a lot of other people in that situation, and the Mass Criminal Justice Training Council talks about an M4 as a force multiplier from the police academies themselves. I need a force multiplier because I'm the only person there. If I have multiple assailants enter my property, a 30-round magazine is going to be a great deterrent and a great force multiplier for me to defend my family. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Frances Noon. I live here in Lynn, and I have a few broader scope points that I will make. First of all, I just want to recognize that this isn't a theoretical thing that we're philosophizing about, and people here and people on the panel have experienced gun violence directly, and also, I want to just recognize everyone for being here to partake in this conversation. The first part for me is the Second Amendment is, I want to speak to or have us consider the essence of the Second Amendment in having the right to bear arms is that at its core, it's a citizen's right to protect ourselves from a government that may have taken too much power. Also note that our government, though, we're made up of people, so it's people taking power, and it's about a balance of power. So that's at the core of it. And when this came up with Newtown, I was surprised by the reaction from a few people where they say, oh, I don't want bans on assault weapons, and then it clicked for me that, oh, they don't want an infringement on their right to protect themselves. And they don't want a concentration of guns only to be in the government, because that's an imbalance of power. That said, when another fellow human being or citizen uses an assault weapon on other people, they are violating that other person's life. So they are infringing on another person's balance of power. And we need to speak to that as well.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Wow, okay. I would like the police officers to have more guns than anyone else on the street, to have more powerful guns. I enjoy government. I would like my government to be better armed than citizens. My name's Carrie Zagarella. I'm a kindergarten teacher in Ipswich, Massachusetts. I'm a former teacher in Lynn. Couple things I bring as a kindergarten teacher is that when I see a lot of misunderstandings, I want to have a repetition of the content. Massachusetts is not trying to take away any more guns. We're talking about what we can do nationally because we are a model. Second thing, if somebody comes into my classroom with a hammer, I am pretty aggressive when it comes to protecting my kids. I could probably get them, or hands and feet. I'm more worried about magazines and high-impact rifles. And as far as the National Registry and background checks, you may or may not know this, but all teachers in Massachusetts are mandated to be fingerprinted this fall, and 48 other states already do that. So if all the teachers in the state have to be fingerprinted and have national background checks, why not people who are buying guns? And one more thing, I worked on your campaign because you had a 0 rating with the NRA.
Hi, my name is Molly Malloy. I'm with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, and I feel like I have heard some common themes today, and they are that no one wants criminals to have guns. I think that's something that could be viewed upon as common ground, and we don't permit that in Massachusetts because our laws require background checks. However, we have noted that in New Hampshire and Vermont and Maine and in 33 states in the US, these are not requirements. So I believe what we need to do is let our federal legislators know that we feel this way, and they work for us. They represent our beliefs, and you can easily email and write and call your congresspeople. A good website is contactingthecongress.org, and you can tell your friends in in Vermont and New Hampshire and Maine and elsewhere in the country to do the same. You know, I've also heard a lot about rights today, and you know, no one is trying to take away the Second Amendment. No one has brought that up, but I really feel I deserve the right to send my baby to first grade and not have him be riddled with 11 bullets from an assault weapon that's made for war. And I really think that that has to be very, very important. And yes, it's not common, maybe, that there are mass shootings, but there were 16 in 2012. Newtown was the 16th one, and there's just too many. It's too many.
Good afternoon, my condolences, ma'am, and my thanks to the panel. As a teenager, I was taken by a family friend to his gun club, and we were taught to target shoot, and I enjoyed it. I do support the Second Amendment, but I thoroughly support background checks and licensing on all guns. If you ask the Chiefs of Police, National Chiefs of Police Association, where the handguns come from that are proliferating our street, they will tell you gun runners go to states with no gun laws, buy them and bring them back and sell them on the streets. Whitey Bulger is a perfect example on the top 10 most wanted list, and he had a stash of guns he bought while on the run. Please tell me how this is going on. It's because state-by-state gun laws do not work. We need national gun control. And to anyone in this room who needs an assault weapon to defend their home, can't do it with a small caliber gun, you need to go back to gun school and learn how to shoot. Do a little target shooting. I could defend my home with a small caliber assault weapon. And the other thing, gun owners is pushing that we have police officers in all the schools. My community has 5 schools. That would come out to about $500,000 a year. So the people in my community are supposed to put $500,000 into the town budget because gun owners won't accept reasonable gun laws. We're not asking to ban guns. We want reasonable gun laws. That means getting rid of high caliber magazines, getting rid of assault weapons, and finally coming to the table with some reasonable ideas. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Amy Ballant. I live in Gloucester. I work in a school. I'm an educator and a therapist. We now practice lockdown in our school, and actually we've been doing it since Columbine. This will not solve the problem, and in fact it puts it on our kids. So they now live in fear as we practice lockdown. Should somebody show up and start shooting at them, we have a false sense of security that we might be okay if we lock ourselves in our room, as they did in Newtown. So we are now putting this on our kids. Clearly the issue is guns. It is not our kids that should be having to deal with this problem. Putting officers in our schools will not do it either. Kids are in school to learn. They can't learn when they live in fear.
We closed off the line back where Darren is with the young lady in the blue sweater. Anybody after her? Just because we're already 15 minutes over the allotted time, we've kept all of our panel here considerably longer than we had promised them we would. So I want to give those people that were up there before Darren did a chance to speak, and then we'll conclude. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Joanne Vizziello. I'm from Wenham, Massachusetts. I'm also the mother of 2 children. I just wanted to stand here and say I support universal background checks. I support President Obama's initiative for gun control. I support a ban on assault rifles. And I in response to the student who got up and said, what are we going to do to get the criminals? The answer is make it harder for them to buy guns. Yes, it's not going to stop everything. There's things that are illegal now. Cocaine and heroin is illegal now and people get them. But that doesn't mean we should start selling cocaine and heroin and make it very easy for people to get it. It won't solve the problems. It'll just make it harder for them. And one other thing I wanted to mention is I was standing in line, and I didn't come prepared to speak, but when I saw all the people here on the other side, I thought I'd get up. I couldn't help but think of the Butter Battle book. Do you remember that Dr. Seuss book
where people started buying weapons, and this guy built bigger weapons and bigger weapons and bigger weapons and bigger weapons, until finally the absurdity is it. If you guys all want to buy assault rifles, well, I don't even know because I don't watch horror movies. What's bigger than that? But should I go get one? It's crazy.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Robert Dorson. I'm a lifelong resident of Lynn. I came up here with this little book with nothing written in it, but listening to people, I started making notes here. I just felt a need to... Yes. Anyways, I felt a need like that woman to come up here and get in line when I saw everybody who had choreographed for themselves, probably through websites to get up here. Proliferation was a word that came to my mind before I heard somebody say it, because not only proliferation of weaponry, but of ideas. I mean, I've heard buzzwords of like emotional correction. Certainly, that's what they're doing is they're overcorrecting by buying all these weapons now and putting them on the streets for themselves. And I saw a bumper sticker that said, if guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns. Well, the problem with that that's been there since that bumper sticker's been out for 20 years is that all these people have committed these mass genocides in these malls and schools and theaters and shrines, is that I don't believe these people had criminal records before they committed these assaults and killings, but afterwards, when they would be tried unless they killed themselves, then they'd be outlaws. So that bumper sticker makes no sense. That guy can throw them out. And also, I think there's probably some kind of statistics that the more guns in homes, theoretically for self-protection, the higher the rates of horrible accidents in those homes that have resulted in killings, if I'm correct, of family members and others, because guns have been in those homes. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Gail Brook, and I'm a resident of Swampscott. I just want to say I'm for anything you can do to get rid of assault rifles, anything you can do to get rid of multiple bullet magazines, anything you can do to get...
You know, all the people that are speaking now waited all that time while people that had an opinion spoke, and they treated them with respect and were quiet. I think they have a right to the same kind of quiet.
Exactly. I wanted to be one of the people who spoke for gun control in any form so that we can prevent the kind of tragedies that have happened in Connecticut in the last few months. Thank you.
My name's Robert Deininger. First, I'd like to thank the law enforcement people. When you prosecute criminals, when you catch criminals, that helps all of us. So thank you for taking the criminals off the streets. With regard to gun control, a lot of the things that are being talked about now have been tried in the past. They aren't very effective. But I have a question, again, for law enforcement people. We know that a lot of people use legal firearms to protect themselves and prevent crime. It's not just gun crime, but a gun can prevent many other kinds of violent crime. And in your jurisdictions, do you keep track of how often that happens?
No, apparently not.
Further comment. You're very good at collecting statistics that support your gun control position. It would be honest to also collect statistics that support the legal use of firearms for protection.
And that's why we have an open microphone so that folks can share that information if they wish to. We're appreciative of it. Thank you.
My name is Peter Johnson. I'm from Beverly. I'm in favor of rational gun controls, including the types of model we have here in Massachusetts. Recent polling indicates that 82% of Americans support gun control, including national background checks, and that includes members of the NRA. I think, excuse me? I'm sorry. I apologize. Thank you. Thank you. I would encourage those who are in favor of gun control regulations to speak out with as much passion as the people who are speaking out against gun control. And one way of doing this that I've been able to identify is to go to the Gabby Gifford, Mark Kelly website, Americans for Responsible Solutions. They're accumulating numbers of people who are in favor of their very modest beginning to gun controls. And I would encourage as many people as possible to tell everyone you know to do the same thing so that our voices can be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
Hi, my name is Phil Caluso. I live in Wenham, Mass. I voted for you, Congressman. Thank you for holding this forum. Thank you for everyone for being here. It's a multifaceted problem. I think that's represented by the nature of this committee. We've heard a lot of rhetoric on both sides. I don't think that's particularly helpful. We've heard a lot of statistics, and I can't remember the comedian who said, I think 80% of all statistics are made up on the spot. And I think that happened here today. I don't think that has really promoted a rational discourse, unfortunately. The major point I'd like to say is how sad this whole thing is, that in 2013, in the United States of America, we're talking about percentages. There should be a zero tolerance issue. One person killed is one too many. I don't care how we get there, but that's what we should be striving for.
Congressman, members of the panel, thank you for holding this discussion today. This hasn't been mentioned yet, but I'm interested in gun-free zones. Most of these incidents have taken place in gun-free zones. I myself am a concealed carry weapon holder. I work from home. Most of the times when I leave my home, I go to the post office or to one of my kids' schools. I cannot legally bring my guns there. The president has proposed expanding gun-free zones. I don't see how a gun-free zone helps anybody. It prevents me from carrying my weapon. However, when I walked in here today, I didn't see anything that would have prevented me from actually having a gun on me right now, other than the fact that I'd be a felon. If I wanted to kill people, I'm really not concerned about that extra felony. So how exactly does the gun-free zones do anything except hamper law-abiding people that don't want to cause harm from defending themselves, while putting a sign on the front door of fresh meat, come shoot here?
Hi, my name is Kira Kay, and I'm from Marblehead, Massachusetts, and I want to thank you for having this forum today, and thank you for all the protection our law enforcement is providing. And I'd like to see these new groups being formed to give mothers a voice in this conversation. And I want to thank you and bring this message back to Washington, that while I feel like other groups are more organized, and perhaps some people are feeling bullied in this room, go back to Washington and don't feel bullied by the NRA. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Susan Coviello from Essex. Hi, John. I have so much to say in so little time. 25 years ago, we started having forums like this when we started talking about the AIDS epidemic, and we all stood in rooms like this talking about how to protect people from AIDS. 25 years later, and we always said, eventually, everybody you know is going to have been touched by the AIDS epidemic, and I bet most people in this room have, even obliquely. Now I'm trying to explain to my 84-year-old mother who summered in Sandy Hook about the gun violence that happened there. We don't call it an incident in our lives, we should call them catastrophes. Adam Lanza was not a criminal until he took those guns onto that school property. His mother was not a criminal. She owned those guns legally. They were not stolen guns. He took them from the house where he lived. I think those things are really important, and eventually we're going to be standing here wondering how close are all of us to the gun violence. They are not incidents, they're not things that happened in the past, they are catastrophes, and we have to consider them catastrophes. So please keep up the good fight, and I agree with the woman who spoke before me. Do not let the NRA bully you, and to the gentleman who spoke before her, I'd like to see America as a gun-free zone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Ron Seaboyer. I'm an alderman from the city of Melrose. In my occupation, I maintain a lot of school districts. I maintain a lot of communities. Just recently, we've been installing quite a few security systems in the schools. I'm amazed how many schools there are that do not have a real security system. A lot of times they'll press a button, the door opens up, you walk in, before anybody in the office can see that visitor, they're gone down the hallway. Mayor, please check your school systems, how they supervise visitors. You might be amazed how many people can just walk into your schools. Also, being in the city of Melrose, we are very conscious of the budgets. So I think before you put police officers in every single school, just tighten up your security systems. That's it. We haven't had any problems in Melrose, but we have been touched by gun violence in Melrose. And every time I hear something, I think of your son. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ron. Ron is one of a number of officials that have joined us here today. Anne Marie Crowell, who joined me at the State of the Union address, is here somewhere. And I wanted to acknowledge her and thank her. She had an unfortunate incident. Hi, Anne Marie. She had an unfortunate incident in her family as well. I'll speak a little to that in closing remarks. But Superintendent Catherine Latham was here. School committee member from Lynn, Charlie Gallo. John Ford, school committee member from Lynn. Brendan Brighton, as the Lynn City Council, was here. Wes Slade from the Beverly City Council, the vice president there. You have the distinction of being the final word from the audience.
My name is Monique Hamzy. I'm a concerned mother, and I'm with Moms Demand Action. I think this is such an important conversation, and it saddens me that it's so difficult to have. I have a question for John Rosenthal. What will happen if new common sense gun legislation is not passed at the federal level?
You can call it rhetoric, but we have the equivalent of a 9/11 attack every month and a half in America. Over 3,000 people die from firearms. So every day 87 will die that Congress doesn't do something. And if we wait 2 years and maybe we can change Congress over this issue, I mean, after all, think about it. The fiscal cliff, the debt ceiling, I mean, yeah, they're important. They don't result in 87 dead Americans a day. And Congress is saying that a background check will be a hard vote. But don't count on military-style weapons, don't count on large ammunition clips. We can't even count on a background check. So if we wait 2 years and try to change Congress over that, that is 60,000 more dead Americans if we don't act.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody on the panel that feels that they haven't had an opportunity to say what might be on their mind before we wrap up? If anybody has any final comment, I'm perfectly willing. Julie.
Hi, I just wanted to tell people if you go on the Mayors Against Illegal Guns and look at that website because it's very informative. And if you believe that our gun laws should be fixed and fix this broken background check system, then you can do it on there.
This isn't about putting more on your back. This is not about having you feel that you're being burdened unnecessarily. It's about trying to have common sense solutions. It's only going to come from the citizen. That's where it comes from. So, again, I don't have the magic answers, but I certainly have plenty of questions. And you do too. So thank you for spending your Saturday afternoon with us. I hope to some degree you thought this was a useful dialogue. Thank you. And I want to thank all the panel members as well. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much, John. And thank all of the panelists for their contributions here today and for giving your time for the afternoon for our 6th District conversation. And I want to thank everybody in the audience because I know that people came in here thinking that it was going to be sides. In fact, sometimes I heard people mention our side and their side. I didn't hear anybody speak today from any angle or any opinion that isn't for safe neighborhoods, safe schools, and safe families. And I think the trick here is to try and get everybody from every perspective to focus on that and to help us find out the best way to do that. The district attorney is right. You know, we started off the premise of this whole afternoon by reminding people that we're not trying to delegitimize the Second Amendment as interpreted by the United States Supreme Court. You know, that has been decided. That's not our nature or our inclination or desire. But the court, that court, was very clear about saying that, you know, there are some limitations that you as a society may want to put on that right. So that, you know, we find out what is the best way to have carried weapons, you know, so that they are not dangerous to the community or to someone's self. What's the best manner to go about doing that, and what is the purpose on that? So we are trying to get to that point, and I think if we can get from the feeling threatened point to the contributing to the answer of how to make people safe in their lives, their families, and neighborhoods, we'll be better off. 31,000 gun deaths in 2010, 62% suicides, 36% homicides, 2% were unintentional. There were 34,000 motor vehicle accidents. So it's a big number compared to what goes on. We can't stop all of them, Hopefully we can stop as many as we possibly can and make everybody's household safe. I spoke earlier of Anne Marie Crowell, who joined me down in Washington for the State of the Union address. Anne Marie, I suspect you won't mind if I tell the story, but Anne Marie has to look out her window every morning to her neighbor's house, where she can see the very room where her son went on Christmas Eve not too long ago to join his friend. Got a call from his sister telling him it was time to get home for the family gathering, hung up the phone, and his friend was showing him his mother's gun. Legally purchased, mother was a legal owner, had no intention of doing anything unsafe, but the son had somehow got the gun, and then he shot it, and Anne Marie's son, the 12-year-old son, is no longer with us. Those are the types of things that we should be trying to prevent. One thought that I have on that is, if we could get the technology down that would personalize handgun use, it would be a benefit to the people that have the gun lawfully and want to use it safely, as well as the people that might become victimized by it. Technology exists that can be perfected. We should make sure, and I think we're going to make sure, that we have guns built up to that standard so gun owners can feel comfortable that they're not putting people at risk as they enjoy their own rights, and the rest of society feels at least we're moving in the direction of being safe and secure to the extent that we can within the constitutional bounds. Thank all of you again. I think largely it was a civil afternoon, and people got to express their opinion. I thank you very much for keeping it that way and for sharing your afternoon with us, and I appreciate it. Thanks.